here we go for part two of Jordan Peterson apologizing for fascists.
Donald with great amusement on Twitter during his presidential run and afterward when he was in office, before he was turfed so scandalously by the progressive good thinkers who infested the platform.
Infested the platform. So Trump, by virtue of being amusing to Peterson, means that anybody's reactions to him is turfing. I'm assuming that's related to trans stuff. This infestation, you know how fascists love that kind of rhetoric, uh, is the response. Just subtle, not so subtle.
And who must be commended on their arrogance, presumption, and sheer gall. The man has a devastating and underappreciated, at least by the legacy leaders of opinion, sense of humor.
The legacy leaders of opinion. So this is another one of those things that quote unquote public intellectuals like to do when they are the victim. That's an abstract idea, right? These legacy leaders of opinion. We're in the internet age, bro. Everybody's offering their opinion. I'm doing so right now at all times. No one's directing me by the nose like you're trying to with you and your ilk. And these misguided abstractions in your head are something to be ridiculed because they don't see the humor in fascism like you do. Cool.
Although it is also somewhat ruthless. I own a very comical book, The Collected Poems of Donald J. Trump, available for purchase at...
What would a fascist apologetic video be without hawking some more shit to buy in the middle of it? Just it's a nonstop. This is the first indicator that somebody's slipped or fallen off a certain kind of clip when it's like cliff. Anyway, keep going, Nick. Keep going.
The Daily Wire website, by the way, which compiles his most memorable tweets and declarations from 2009 to 2019 into beautiful library edition hardback form. It is a ridiculously funny tome.
It is a ridiculously sickening commercial. Oh, man.
I believe that deeper consideration of this proclivity for the viciously funny is also useful in shedding more general light on Trump's admittedly complex personality. First, we should fairly note that dictatorial types, a category which his enemies insist he falls into, are generally not known for their sense of humor.
So because, not that Trump is objectively funny, necessarily, but because Peterson finds him funny, and that perhaps enough people have regarded his sense of humor positively, the general understanding of dictators is that they're not funny. Therefore, he isn't like a dictator, or can't be one, or doesn't say all the dictator stuff. This is such a lapse in reasoning. It should stand for itself, but here I am reacting to it.
People were imprisoned in the Stalinist Soviet Union for being the first to stop applauding after a speech by the great leader.
Now, you say something like that because you're trying to draw a dramatic contrast between the craziest shit that happens under more powerful dictatorial powers and the seemingly innocuous fluff that you would like to swallow from Trump. You don't say that unless you're trying to also say, well, it's not so bad right now, right?
Criticism was absolutely out of the question, and certainly not forthcoming from the top.
I encourage you to check out Anthony Scaramucci's podcast, where he talks about anyone who criticizes or tries to correct Trump or outshine Trump's opinion or ideas. Just, people have testified to this a lot who've worked with him.
I've also never encountered a compendium of the witty and amusing things said by Adolf Hitler or Fidel Castro or Chairman Mao.
Again, this idea that because Peterson finds Trump funny, he's not these people, which is just a weird framing to begin with. We just have to concede that's a weird way to have to frame things to begin with. You, one, are compelled to argue that Trump is not a dictator at all. So the fact that we've arrived at that conversation doesn't give you pause. But then you have to say, well, it's because he's kind of funny, right? People have also testified to Hitler's charisma and interpersonal, like, fond memories that they had of him visiting them and helping them and whatever the hell else. I'm sure he's cracked jokes at some point with those people. This is just fucking fascinating that you would follow this line to smooth over Trump. Wow.
Trump does have a surprisingly thin skin in some settings, but he can take a joke as well as tell one. He was roasted on Comedy Central in 2011, bandied back and forth self-deprecatingly several times with David Letterman. He even made a joke about getting wood during his presidential debate with Joe Biden.
And you know, we knock on wood wherever we may have wood, that I'm in very good health. I just won.
I don't think he could help himself. And I truly like that. He's rough in his jokes, but no more, say, than Bill Burr.
You can't hit women. You can't. You honestly cannot. You ever see how they fall? They fall like toddlers, you know?
And is it not the case that a certain degree of harshness is necessary for serious comedy?
This starts to just trail off into some obfuscations and random thoughts about comedy, not about what Trump actually does or says that isn't comedic or should be taken deathly seriously, as one of Peterson's catchphrases is. Let's compare him to Bill Burr. Let's microanalyze his sense of humor and really humanize this series of increasingly crazy, chaotic, disquieting things that Trump does on top of his baseline bad shit, non-stop lying, election denial, every weird thing like wanting to fuck his daughter you could point to. But, you know, he's kind of funny, you know, like a Bill Burr type. Amazing.
Understanding and appreciating this helps us in comprehending one of Trump's more remarkable features, his serious attractiveness to the working class. This is something particularly made evident in his ability to easily banter with soldiers and policemen, a rare trait among politicians, often made nervous by the necessity of interacting with real people with dangerous and difficult jobs.
I don't really understand. I might have to go back and reflect on what was just said there. But my first thought is, when you're trying to interact with people, hold on.
Let us not.
I needed to slow it down and take it back. So they say, is it a real appeal to working class people? That is a loaded claim. Certainly there's numbers to reflect how many people vote for him versus not vote at all. So the idea that you're just going to lump in the idea of the mass of working class people being for him is what you're trying to launder there, it seems. He goes on to suggest that politicians are nervous interacting with regular people who have to do difficult jobs or interact with dangerous people, which I feel like one of the prerequisites for most politicians is they can be basically human to people regardless of the job that they have. I don't really understand how this is supposed to distinguish Trump, or is somehow just a truism about politicians that somehow they're just reduced to the shivers because they talk to a police officer or something. That just feels like a weird thing to say.
Let us not forget as well that the humor characteristic of working class men and women also tends toward the rough.
That's a fair enough thing to say, but it also obscures just the outright ignorance and racism and anti-trans stuff and just any, like, it picks on the little guy. I've worked 20 odd low income jobs over the years, and the kinds of people in those roles, sure, they're unconcerned about sounding particularly civil, especially with making a crass joke, and God knows I'm an asshole who will say all of the same shit and laugh along. Um, but that doesn't, I guess, vindicate doing that. It doesn't vindicate the place that it might be coming from when you're not necessarily only joking. So, again, we're still in this world where we're just sort of belaboring ideas of humor to try to soften Trump, which just, the whole exercise is ridiculous. But yeah, there's part two. I'm going to make these about 10 minutes, I think, and break them down.